and assistance. 1. Humbly make your address and supplication to God. Your heart is in His hands, and to Him alone heart work belongs. He only can search, cleanse, new make, and keep the heart. Pray to God, not only that past sins may be forgiven, but that there may not be future ones needing forgiveness. Beg Him to new make your heart, and to create a clean one in you. Would you be rid of sinful thoughts? Pray against them, lift up a prayer, and cry out as St. Paul did against the messenger of Satan. Pray without fainting, that even if they are not removed, His grace may be sufficient for you. Cry out as a virgin would do in a case of rape, and God will hear the cry of the oppressed, and of them who groan. Call God to your relief, tell Him you cannot stand before these troops and armies that defy Israel, and Israel's God, and beg Him to vindicate His own name by His own power, as He can easily do. 2. Hide the word of God in your heart that you may not sin against Him. Do as holy David did, that you might be more holy, as Psalm 119:11. Apply the plaster to the sore place, the heart is the seat and center of sin, apply the word there, lay it up, and it will rout and root out these Canaanites and daughters of the land who are a grief of heart to you. Sin is in the heart, hide the word there, as if it were in ambush to cut off sin upon its first appearance. The word of God is the sword of the Spirit, and there is nothing like it to wound and kill sin with. It is one of the weapons of our warfare, which is mighty through God to cast down and cast out wicked imaginations. 2 Corinthians 10:4 and 5. Put on therefore this and the whole armor of God, that you may be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. Ephesians 6:10-17. He is a God who works wonders, even in this matter, and of this kind, by His word and Spirit. Hide this word, then, which is the sword of the Spirit, and that by which He achieves such glorious conquests over hearts and thoughts. 3. Begin the day with thoughts of God and good things. Do not let fancies and vain imaginations get the start of you in the morning. Fancy was our playfellow for many a year before we knew what reason and understanding was. Our childhood and youth was vanity. You know that many times schoolfellows and playfellows get such an intimate acquaintance and familiarity with us that it is hard to break it off. But fancy and imagination, these childish things which still have a strong hold of and strongholds in us, must be cast off before our thoughts can become obedient to Christ, as the Apostle tells us, 2 Corinthians 10:5. Therefore mount up with the lark, begin with God, think much and often that He sees and observes you. It was said by the Romans, watch yourself, for Cato sees you. God's watching should awe you as Cato's did them, as Psalm 44:20 and 21, and so it did David, as Psalm 139:17 and 18. If vanity gets possession in the morning, it will strive to keep it all the day. What a dish is first seasoned with, it keeps the flavor for long after. Take, as it were, a good draught of the word in the morning to prevent the windy vapors of vain thoughts. As soon as you wake, there are many fiddlers at your bedroom door to sing you wanton songs, but do not listen to them. Tell them, and all the suitors and clients who solicit you, that you are otherwise engaged and have business of consequence to mind. Do not listen to any sirens. Stop your ear against all such charmers, no matter how pleasingly they sing and charm, for it can never be wisely nor to advantage. Thus, if when you awake, you are with God in meditation, you are likely to walk with God in your whole behavior, and to be in the fear of the Lord all the day long. 4. If this will not suffice, chide and check vain thoughts. If they still haunt you and, like flies that are beaten off, return again, use severity and sharpness. Alas! We are all too indulgent, courteous and gentle to these bold, intruding travellers, for so they are called, as 2 Samuel 12:4. There came a traveller to the rich man, a lust to David in the case of Bathsheba, for it refers to that, and he killed another man's lamb for this traveller. This lust, if he had only examined it, he would have found it to be a spy or a vagabond, which should not have been feasted, but sent to the whipping post. The reason why we have so many peddlers coming to our doors is because we buy and take their trifles, and the reason why so many of these beggars and wandering gypsies knock at our doors is because we give them alms and lodging. If we only frowned on them and executed the law upon them, we should probably have none or less of their company. 5. Turn away your eyes from beholding vanity. Avoid occasions and appearances of evil, for the world is cheated by appearances and shows. Men become thieves when opportunity is offered them, who without it perhaps would not have thought of being so. Just as the heart inflames the eye, so the eye affects and inflames the heart. Curiosity to see and hear the silliest pictures and wanton songs has often induced persons to think such thoughts and to do such things as otherwise they would scarcely have dreamed of. Vain objects and vain speeches engender vain fancies and imaginations, and so proceed and increase to more ungodliness. 2 Timothy 2:16. Therefore the apostle warned Christians not to tell stories of fornication, uncleanness or covetousness. They should not be so much as named or mentioned. Ephesians 5:3. Such stories, even though only romances, leave bad impressions on men's fancies. We need to keep a strict watch over eyes and ears if ever we would preserve our hearts and thoughts pure and chaste, lest we tempt the tempter to tempt us, and to make our hearts worse by opportunity and custom than they are by nature. This made King David beg of God to turn away his eyes from beholding vanity. Psalm 119:37, and good Job was so much afraid of himself that he made a covenant with his eyes, lest he should think unbecomingly of a maid. Looking produces lusting as lusting puts on looking. In Matthew 1:28. 6. Beware of idleness. Every man should have a calling to follow, and follow his calling, which is an excellent preservative from evil thoughts. Idle people have no business but to sin, and they who follow their calling have no leisure to sin. Their thoughts are too intent to be diverted. Time lies heavy on some men's hands for want of employment, and therefore they become busybodies, gadding and wandering about as their fancy, or the devil, like the wind, drives them, or like a decoy draws and allures them. 1 Timothy 5:13-15. Indeed, these idlers or busybodies are joined with evalders, thieves and murderers. 1 Peter 4:15. They know that their time is passing away, and will pass away, but they do not know how to pass it away, so that whatever temptation comes, they seem to be ready. The wink of an eye or the holding up of a finger prevails with them. They follow the devil's whistle, and dance to his tune. They spend their days like vagrants, and their life is a mere diversion from that which is the business of it. They cannot endure to be with themselves, and therefore trifle away their precious time, and adventure the loss of their precious souls, by becoming sinners for company. Our thoughts are so active and restless that they will be doing something or other, and like unruly soldiers, if others do not employ them well, they will employ themselves ill. God has therefore in mercy appointed us callings to take up our thoughts, that they may be not only innocent but profitable to ourselves and others. Paradise had employment, and heaven also will not be without it. Idleness is an hour of temptation, and we can have no excuse to stand idle in the marketplace when God himself offers to employ us. The best way to rid our ground of weeds is to till it, and the best way to free our hearts from evil thoughts is by good employment. Only remember this, that your particular calling must not jostle out nor infringe upon your heavenly calling, nor should your being a tradesman make you forget that your conversation, your trading, must be for heaven. It would be bad for you to mind what is convenient and forget what is necessary. Let Mary's one thing be preferred before Martha's many. 7. Love God and his law much. In so doing your thoughts will be much upon him and it. The love of God will find your heart work enough to do. He who delights in God and his law will find opportunity enough to meditate therein, and pleasure enough in meditating therein day and night. To Psalm 1:2, Psalm 119:97. Your soul will be where it loves, and where your treasure is there your heart and thoughts will be. In Matthew 6:21. Set your affections on things above, and when once your love is settled, your thoughts will center and dwell there. Love will make you watchful and fearful, lest you should offend the beloved of your soul. It will make you angry with, and cause you to hate all the sinful thoughts that would attempt to withdraw you or to divert you. It will make you like a tree planted by the riverside, exceedingly and beautifully fruitful, for so will you be in your season. It is meditation that is there likened to the watering of the river, and that meditation flows from delight, and that from love, as you may see Psalm 1:2 and 3. Thus you will grow up and prosper, so much so that your leaf shall neither fade nor wither. Verse 3. Thus I have endeavored to show the sinfulness of sinful thoughts, and endeavored to prevent them. 2. A warning against sinful words. As I have endeavored before to clear the heart, so that there might not be an evil thought in it, so now my aim is to clear and cleanse the mouth, so that not so much as an evil word might be in it. Too many people are apt to think that words are only wind, things that they shall not be called to account for, and therefore they are so bold and daring as to say, with our tongue will we prevail, our lips are our own, who is Lord over us. Psalm 12:4. We may speak what we will, they say, and we will speak what we may. What an unruly tongue has that man who can say that his tongue is his own. Patient Job in a fit of passion said, "Let me alone that I may speak, and come of me what wills." Job 13:13. Alas! Is it not thus with many? When you tell them of the sinfulness of sin and of the sins of the tongue, they fly in our faces and say, "Hold your peace, we will speak, let there come on us what will." How desperate they are. But if you will be a little serious, I would ask you, when you are cool and calm, this question: would you not live and see good days? Yes, we would. Who is there that does not desire life, and to see good days while he lives? Many say, "Who will show us any good?" And everyone says, "Life, life, skin for skin, and all for life." Come, ye children, hearken unto me, and I will teach you the fear of the Lord. What man is he that desireth life, and loveth many days that he may see good? Keep thy tongue from evil, and thy lips from speaking guile. Psalm 34:11-13. Oh, that all the parents in the world would call their children together to give them such lectures as this. Many say, "Come my children, I will teach you the way to grow rich and great, how to be fine and in fashion." But few call them and say, "Come my children, I will teach you the fear of the Lord, the best wisdom and godliness, the best and most enriching trade, which is good for this life and that to come." 0 That they would ask them, "Would you see life?" Yes, you say, but how? Why, if you seek for life and good days, keep your tongue from evil and guile. This is confirmed in the New Testament, 1 Peter 3:10. The best way to live and live well is to keep a good tongue in our heads, as our proverb says, and to have no evil words in our mouths. For, as the wise man assures us, whoso keepeth his mouth and tongue, keepeth his soul from troubles. Proverbs 21:23. This is not only a political, but a divine assertion, and is true between God and man, as it is between man and man. Holy David was so afraid of his tongue, lest he should offend with it, that he put a bridle into his mouth. The Psalm 39:1. Surely the tongue is an unruly thing that it must be bridled like a horse or an ass. Indeed it is so unruly that one may better rule horses, and manage them, and more easily turn such unwieldy things as great ships are than keep the tongue in order. Therefore St. James pronounces him a perfect man who offends not in word, and one that is able with ease to bridle the whole body, when he has the mastery of his tongue. James 3:2-4. It is a rare thing to use the tongue well. Now to help you against this evil, that you may not sin with your mouths, tongues or lips, which are all one in signification, let me beg you to consider that. 1. Sinful words are wholly forbidden us, and their opposites are enjoined upon us. God has told us what we shall not, and what we shall say, what words we ought not, and what we ought to use. As to the negative, let no corrupt, filthy, rotten, unsavory communication proceed out of your mouth, but affirmatively that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. Ephesians 4:29. Again, in the same epistle, but fornication, and all uncleanness, or covetousness, let it not be once named among you, as becometh saints, neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting, which are not convenient, but rather giving of thanks. Ephesians 5:3-4. These things should not be the subject and matter of your conversation and talk, but rather the giving of thanks, that is, that which is graceful and thankworthy, fit to season and edify others by ministering grace to them, as was said before. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt. Colossians 4:6. It should be such as becomes saints, graceful and comely, seasoned and savory, that which may not defile any but edify all. Though a Christian is not always to talk of grace, yet he is always to talk so as to show himself a gracious person. Our very table talk, as well as our meat, should be seasoned with salt. It should be with the first and second course. For salt is the first to be put on, and the last taken off, that all may be seasoned and savory. And so should all our speech be, not like salt that has lost its savour, which has no value even for the dunghill. Luke 14:35. 2. Unless a man take heed to his words and bridle his tongue, his religion is vain, and consequently in vain. It is profitable, idle and impertinent. James 1:26. He only seems to be religious, and thereby both flatters and deceives himself. It is too much to seem to be evil, and too little only to seem to be good. Appearance in evil is too much, but appearance in good is not enough. If a man seems to be religious, and does not bridle his tongue, notwithstanding his seeming to be, he is not religious. A seeming religion is worse than none, as vanity is less than nothing. Isaiah 40:17. He who has a form and only a form of godliness, denying the power thereof, is worse than the man who has not so much as a form, or makes no profession of godliness. How this should oblige us to take heed of tongue sins. 3. Sinful words are evidences of sinful hearts. Words are the image of the mind, and the declaration of it. As a man is known by his picture, so is a heart by its words. Thou art a Galilean, thy speech betrays or discovers thee. We may know of what nationality men are by their language, whether French or Dutch, etc., and likewise whether they are of the heavenly or the hellish world. It is out of the abundance, that is, the fullness and overflowing, of the heart that the mouth speaks. Matthew 12:34. Broach a full cask, and what is in will come out. Words are like a broaching of the heart, and giving it vent, and then out comes that which was within. It is indeed both possible and common for people to speak well when they mean ill. Peace is in their mouth when war is in their heart. But that heart is hypocritical, and out of such a double heart which is full of hypocrisy, they speak with their tongues. As Psalm 12:2, Jeremiah 42:20. If wicked men speak well, yet it is still from an evil heart of hypocrisy, and out of that abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. 4. Evil words corrupt men, and their manners. Our great care should be not to be corrupt, and next to that, not to corrupt others, but evil words corrupt both. They corrupt and defile ourselves. What goes into the mouth, that is, meat, does not defile the man, but what comes out of the mouth, that is, evil words, proceeds from the heart, and they defile the man. The tongue is but a little member, yet it boasts great matters. It is only as a spark of fire, but it kindles a great deal of wood, a world of iniquity, the whole course of nature, and defiles the whole body. James 3:5 and 6. Not only does it defile a man's own body and course of life, but the body, and the community of them with whom we have to do. A little leaven leavens the whole lump. Be not deceived, evil communications corrupt good manners. 1 Corinthians 15:33. What kind of bad language, or evil communication, does the apostle mean here? It is that which he had mentioned in verse 32. Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. Such statements as this, of a loose, Epicurean and atheistic kind, debauch men, and their manners. Many an innocent and promising person has been corrupted by such bad statements. They who use evil communication show no good conduct. People of evil words are seldom people of good manners. If they are so for a while, for no one is suddenly wicked or as bad as possible at first, yet they degenerate, and grow more immoral, and increasingly guilty of bad behavior. Frequent lying eventually makes men so unfamiliar with truth that they scarcely think that there is any difference between them. They jest for so long that they forget what it is to be in earnest, until awakened by the quarrels that these things beget in, and among themselves. 5. The tongue is either man's glory or his shame. It is either worth much or nothing, according to whether it is good or evil. God made man's tongue his glory, but sin makes it his shame. Holy David says to his tongue, Awake up, my glory, Psalm 57:8, and my glory rejoiceth, Psalm 16:9. The apostle, following the Septuagint, renders this, My tongue was glad, Acts 2:26. And when is our tongue our glory, but when it speaks to the glory of God? Then its words are savory and gracious. If, on the other hand, our tongue is a lying tongue, a slandering tongue, or in any other way evil, then it is our shame. What a vast difference there is between a good and a bad tongue. The tongue of the just is as choice silver, a precious commodity. The heart of the wicked, and therefore his tongue, is little worth. Proverbs 10:20. He who pays even a farthing for that which is worth nothing pays a farthing too much. A bad tongue is worth so little that he cannot tell how little. It is worth nothing, or if you will, it is worse than nothing in being nothing. Again, there is that speaketh like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise is health. Proverbs 12:18. We talk of speaking daggers, or dangerous and killing words. The tongue of the wise, on the contrary, is not only a medicine and wholesome, but, in the abstract, health. There is as much difference between a good and bad tongue as between soundness and wounds, health and sickness. Yet again, a wholesome tongue is a tree of life, which is for healing, but perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit. Proverbs 15:4. A wounded spirit who can bear? Who can bear up under a broken spirit? 6. God will judge us for and by our words, as well as by our works and actions. There is a place in Scripture which should make us tremble, and engage us to take heed to our words so long as we have even a day to live. But I say unto you, that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. Matthew 12:36 and 37. If we must give an account of idle words, what account shall we give of filthy and harmful words? Of words that are corrupt and corrupt others. For this reason Solomon tells us that death and life are in the power of the tongue. Proverbs 18:21. The man shall be judged and sentenced according to it. There is such a connection between heart, tongue and deed that he who is judged by one is judged by all of them, for they agree in one. It is noticeable in Psalm 50 that all or most of the charge against men is for words, the sin of the tongue. They have abused God's good word, used their own bad words, giving their mouth to evil. Yet though this is so, the heart was consenting, and the hand executing, and therefore there was a concurrence and cowworking of all three. Thus, after speaking of their words, God says, "These things hast thou done, and then thou thoughtest." Psalm 50:21. But I will reprove thee, he goes on, that is, for all this, and especially for your words. This is according to what is said elsewhere, "Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints, to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and of all their." Note this. Hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Jude 14 and 15, that is, they have spoken against him in his members. It is also said that their mouths speak great swelling words, as murmurers and complainers do. Verse 16. They will jeer at the people of God and taunt them with the name of holy and spiritual, and utter hard speeches against them. But when Christ comes to judgment, he will call them to account for all the hard speeches, and all the great swelling words which by way of complaint they have spoken against his members, or by way of flattery, and admiration for lucre's sake. They have spoken in commendation and praise of wicked and cruel men. Take heed, therefore, of the sins of the tongue. When Dives was in hell, it seems that the part that was most tormented was his tongue, for he begs water to cool his tongue. This gives us some reason to think that, even in relation to Lazarus, he had sinned much with his tongue, and used hard speeches against poor Lazarus, for it was by him that he would have had the water brought. In what we sin we smart, and are pained and plagued, as Dives was with and in his tongue. If the tongue is set on fire of hell while on earth, how will it be set on fire when it is in hell? The sins of the mouth cry for vengeance with an open mouth, and make others cry for it too. In Psalm 59, the holy writer, not yet a king but still a prophet, prays, "Scatter them, bring them down, O Lord." Verses 11 to 13. Why, David? Why are you so severe? What have they done? Oh, it is for the sin of their mouth, and the words of their lips, for their cursing and lying. Then he is at it again, consume them in wrath, consume them. The sin of their mouth drew forth against them this dreadful imprecation from this merciful and good person, and made him beg God to execute it upon them. Men will have a sad account to give for speaking iniquity, as well as for working it. Let me therefore entreat you to take heed to your words. 1. Let your words be few. This should be so, not only in your dealings and conversation with men, but in your addresses to God. God is in heaven, and thou upon earth, therefore let thy words be few. Ecclesiastes 1:2. This is largely the force of the prayer which our Saviour taught his disciples. Matthew 6:6-9. There is a vanity which attends men in religion. They think they will be heard for their loud and much speaking. Silence would be better than speaking amiss, indeed, many times better than much speaking. It is true, there is a time to speak, as there is to be silent, and happy are they who improve it well, yet it is seldom that a multitude of words are without sin, and therefore he that refrains his lips is wise. Proverbs 10:19. Silence reveals wisdom, and conceals ignorance, and it is so much a characteristic of wise men that the oracle tells us that a fool, when he holds his peace, is accounted wise, and he that shuts his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. Proverbs 17:28. As a very worthy and noble author expresses it, if silence were as much in fashion as it is charitable to mankind to wish it, the regions of hell would be far more thinly populated than now they are likely to be. Many have repented for using their tongues too much. Now it is true, a man who holds his peace may offend with his tongue, but it is a more scarce and rare crime than that of much, which is usually too much, speaking. It is gospel doctrine which teaches us to be swift to hear and slow to speak. James 1:19. Moses' imperfection or defect would be an excellence in some people, that is, to be slow of speech. And it would be well with some if they had got such a cold as would keep them from speaking. Oh, the prittle-prattle that abounds among the busybodies of this world. There are many who are not only vain, but unruly talkers, so that a man has more patience to hear them than to hear the beating of a rattling drum. Titus 1:10. Alas, it is not only the chatter and tittle-tattle of idle gossips, as in 1 Timothy 5:13, who speak unbecomingly, and of things which they ought not. But much of the talk that wastes the time of men, who would be loath to drink and swear it away, consists of talk that flatters the present or detracts from the absent, censuring superiors or despising inferiors. What empty, ridiculous, and frothy conversations that excite to carnality are the common pastime, even among those who pretend to better things. And what is such company and conversation good for, except to quench zeal and fervour? Indeed, it is the easy way to lose credit and good name, and if not innocence, yet always time, which is too precious to be squandered away and lost, much more to be sinned away. Should a man full of talk be justified? Job 11:2. Null much talk is full of folly, for a dream cometh through the multitude of business, and the fool's voice is known by multitude of words. Ecclesiastes 5:3. In the multitude of dreams and many words there are also divers vanities, but fear thou God. Ecclesiastes 5:7. It is as if the multitude of words were inconsistent with the fear of God. We cannot very well speak too little, unless we speak by command from God, and in obedience to him. 2. If we must speak, let us speak as we ought. Let our words be wholesome words, such as carry medicine and health in them. Let them be safe and sound speech that may neither be gainsaid nor reproved, that may do no hurt, but may do good. We should speak that which is good to edify men, that which is good for ourselves and others, either naturally, civilly, morally or spiritually good, as opportunity offers and requires. I do not intend any particular enumeration of the sins of the tongue which are to be avoided, nor a detailed discourse about speaking and ordering our tongues, but only to hint at these things in general, leaving the particular application and improvement to be made by every man, as his own case calls for. Therefore, to conclude this, I shall commend but two things in relation to this. A. Look well to your hearts. If they are not well kept, your tongues will be badly kept. Therefore it is said, keep thy heart with all diligence, Proverbs 4:23, or, as it is in the Hebrew, above all keeping. It needs more keeping than anything else, for all the rest of the faculties and members are at the heart's disposal. Therefore keep a strict watch and strong guard over your heart. The speaking of the tongue is from the musing of the heart, which is as fire in the bosom that cannot be hid, but will break out into a flame of words. See Psalm 39:3. When you are heartful, your mouth will run over, and if the fountain of your heart is bitter, the streams of your words cannot be sweet. When David prays that the words of his mouth might be acceptable, he prays for this in relation to it, let the meditations of my heart be acceptable. Psalm 19:14. If the latter, that is, our meditations, are not acceptable, then the former, that is, our words, are not likely to be acceptable. When our heart speaks our words speak our heart, and it is only one thing. No sooner does our heart indite a good matter, but our tongue will be as the pen of a ready writer. Psalm 45:1. The heart of the wise teacheth his mouth, Proverbs 16:23. The Hebrew is, maketh his mouth wise. The fool speaks with an open mouth anything that comes into his head, but a wise man opens his mouth and speaks gravely, wisely, and with deliberation. The mouth needs to go to school, and if we would have it wise, let us get it a wise heart to be its tutor, to teach it the art and grace of speaking wisely and well. The heart of the wise teacheth his mouth. B. Pray to God. For prayer is the general means for preservation and sanctification of heart, tongue and life. Lift up your heart and soul to him and pray, let the words of my mouth, and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord. The Psalm 19:14, of which I have just spoken. Say, O Lord, open thou my lips, and my mouth shall show forth thy praise. Psalm 51:15. Let my mouth be filled with thy praise, and with thy honor all the day. Psalm 71:8. Set a watch, O Lord, before my mouth, keep the door of my lips. Incline not my heart to any evil thing. Psalm 141:3 and 4. That which God keeps is well kept, and if he does not keep the city, the watchmen watch in vain. Commit yourself to the keeper of Israel, and all will be well. Proverbs 16:1-3. 3. Beware of sinning indeed. Before I speak directly about living in the practice of any sin, I crave leave to say some things about and against sins of omission. This is a thing too seldom treated or taken notice of, though there is scarcely any guilt more common than this. 1. Take heed of sins of omission. It is a sin to omit any good which is commanded, as well or ill as to commit any evil which is forbidden, not to do what we ought, as well as to do what we ought not. We are not only to eschew evil, but to do good also. 1 Peter 3:11. I insist on this the rather because many are more apt and prone to omit duties, to be negligent at doing good, than to commit gross and palpable evils. Withal, they look upon it as a less evil, if any at all, for there are so many trifling excuses ready for it, as you may see Luke 14:18-20. I would urge you therefore to consider these things. A. Some of the best men have been guilty of this, and have suffered by it. I will give but 2 examples. First is Jacob, who was most tender of telling a lie, although it was to get a blessing in Genesis 27:11 and 12. Yet this same Jacob was so forgetful of, and for so long neglected and omitted to pay his vow, which he had made at Bethel, that God reminds him of it in Genesis 35:1, and for the omission of which it is supposed that the afflictions mentioned in the former chapter befell him. The other instance is Hezekiah, a good man, and a good king, who did not render to the Lord according to the benefit he had received, nor answered the end of it, but was guilty of not being humble or thankful enough, though he sang a song of praise, it would seem annually, to God. Therefore wrath was upon him. 2 Chronicles 32:25 with Isaiah 38:20. Alas, how prone good men are to neglect duties, and especially that of returning thanks. For the sake of these things the wrath of God comes on his own children, as it comes on the children of disobedience for gross sins. Ephesians 5:5 and 6. How dearly it cost the spouse when she did not open to her beloved a Song of Songs 5:6 and 7. B. Yet generally it is a great affliction to good and godly men to be forced to omit duties, though the omission of them in this instance is no sin of theirs, as in time of sickness or in case of flight. How David mourns while he is in the wilderness, having been persecuted and driven there. How he laments his absence from the assemblies of them that kept holy day. Psalm 42:1-4. Though God in such cases of necessity dispenses with his Sabbath, and consequently his instituted worship on that day, holy men will still lament this necessity, and mourn that they are restrained from sharing with others, and that they are forced to do that which otherwise would not be lawful to do on a Sabbath day. It is for that reason, and not to exclude others, that, I conceive, our Saviour bade the disciples pray that their flight might not be on the Sabbath day. Matthew 24:20. For then the usual ordinances of the day could not be enjoyed, nor the ordinary duties of the day practiced and performed. C. Just as it should be an affliction to be in a necessity, so it is a sin to be willing to omit a duty. It is an affliction not to have a head or hand, but a sin not to have a heart for duty. It is a sin to will evil, and a sin not to will good. But to be willing not to do good is more than sin. Too many people are glad of diversions, as schoolboys are when they have no mind to their books. Anything will serve to put off a duty. When the flesh was weak, and the spirit willing, Christ himself excused his disciples. Matthew 26:41. But if the spirit is unwilling, it is no excuse, no matter how weak the flesh is. Not to will, though we have no power, and much more not to will when we have power, is a sin. The reason why the wicked bade God depart from them was because they had no mind or desire to be acquainted with his ways. Job 21:14. They did not like to retain God in their knowledge. Romans 1:28, or to pay acknowledgments to him. They had no mind nor will nor desire to do it. This is sin, as well as the other sins with which they are charged. D. One omission makes way for another. He who, under pretense of unfitness for duty, puts it off, makes himself fit for nothing more than to omit again. He prepares and fits himself to be unfit for duty, and so to omit duty. To fast too much and for too long takes away, and deadens the appetite. So he who omits one duty is likely to omit another, and then another, until he omits all and gives up his very profession, and when that is gone, the man's religion dies, and he becomes twice dead. Omissions make way for commissions, as in the case of our first parents. It will be worth our while to observe a few texts which speak of sluggards, for from such an attitude sins of omission generally arise. By much slothfulness the building decayeth, and through idleness of the hands the house droppeth through. Ecclesiastes 10:18. The house not only lies open to wind and weather, but at last falls down, when the repairs are neglected and omitted. Our bodies are called the temples of God, of which our souls are, as I may say, the Holy of Holies, or as we call it, the chancel, and it is through sloth that this glorious fabric decays so much. He also that is slothful in his work is brother to him that is a great waster. Proverbs 18:9. He who is a prodigal, a spendthrift, who spends more than he gets, and more than was given him, is a man who will come to nothing, and be worse than nothing very soon. This is true, and it is as true that his brother, the slothful man, will not hold out much longer than he. The sluggard will not plough by reason of the cold, therefore shall he beg in harvest, and have nothing. Proverbs 24. A prodigal comes to nothing, and so does the sluggard. Love is a laborious thing. We read of the labor of love of 1 Thessalonians 1:3, and love never grieves to be obedient, 1 John 5:2 and 3. Now idleness argues a lack of love, for when the angel of Ephesus left his first love, he left also his first works. Revelation 2:4 and 5. When love grows cold, practice becomes dead. The slothful man saith, there is a lion in the way, Proverbs 26:13. If you ask him, why do you not rise up and walk with God? Why do you not go forth and serve God? Oh, he says, there is a lion in the way, there is danger in it. But this is only his imagination. See verse 16. As the door turneth upon his hinges, so doth the slothful upon his bed. Verse 14. How is that? Why, first one way, then another, he cannot rest on his bed of idleness, and yet he is loath to rise, and therefore he turns this way, and that. And if after much ado, and many a yawn he does get up, he hideth his hand in his bosom, it is cold weather that grieveth him to bring it again to his mouth. Verse 15. He is grieved to bring it twice to his mouth, though it is to feed himself. This is the guise of idle and slothful people, indeed of professors. We are to do what we do with our might, and how can that be while our hand is in our bosom? Take it out for shame. For as is the case with the man who, having put his hand to the plough, looks back, so also with the man who does not put his hand to the plough at all. Both will be found unfit for the work and kingdom of God. They shall beg in harvest, but have nothing. In the great day of recompense, these slothful ones will learn to pray and beg, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us, but they shall have nothing, that is, of that which they beg, no door will open to let them into the house of God, where there is bread enough. I remember I said that sins of omission make way for sins of commission, and it is only too true. When Job's friends heard such unbecoming language from him as cursing, they concluded that he omitted praying. Thou restrainest prayer before God. Job 15:4. When men neglect duty, they usually fall into sin. Let us continue with the story of the slothful. I went by the field of the slothful, and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. Proverbs 24:30. And what did he observe? And lo, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. Verse 31. Alas, Eden becomes a wilderness, and paradise a desert. The poor soil is under the curse, it brings forth grieving thorns and pricking briars and stinging nettles, and is again nigh unto more cursing for bringing this forth. Hebrews 6:8. Sin advances by degrees, it seems modest at first, just omit, then it grows bold and bids you commit, and so from omission to commission, until at last the man becomes a man of sin, and a son of perdition, a hopeless, desperate, lost and undone man. Moreover, such people are frequently given up. Romans 1:21. Their first sin was a not glorifying God as God, and then, not being thankful, they became vain, being vain they were darkened, from that they became fools, and so on to abominable idolatries, and at last it came to this, that God gave them up. Verse 24. Such is the danger of sins of omission. One makes way for another, and from that they proceed to commission, until they are given up and cursed. The more knowledge of any duty we have, the more clear it is, and the more we are convinced of it, the more aggravated is the omission of that duty. The clearer the light is, the greater the sin of not receiving it. This is the condemnation. John 3:19. If Christ had not come, their sin had not been so great, but now not to believe is to be without excuse. John 15:22 and 24. If God had not told us what we ought to do, we might have made excuse, and said that had we known better we would have done better. But God hath shown thee, O man, what is good. Micah 6:8, and that not only by his works, but by his word. And if the knowledge of him by them only aggravated men's sin, as it did. Romans 1:21, how greatly will their sin be aggravated who neglect so great salvation, which at first was preached by the Lord Jesus Christ, and afterward confirmed by them that heard him. God bearing them witness with signs and wonders, divers miracles and gifts of the Holy Ghost. Hebrews 2:3 and 4. To him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is a sin, a great sin, a heinous sin, sin with a witness. It may be sin to another who does not know to do good, but not so great a sin as it is to him who knows. Therefore he who did not know his master's will was beaten with only a few stripes, but he who knew it and did not do it was beaten with many. Luke 12:47 and 48. The Jews were accustomed to abate one of the 40 stripes which the law allowed. This they did even to St. Paul, much as they hated him, for of them twice he received 40 stripes save one. 2 Corinthians 11:24. But the man who knows his master's will and does not do it, nor prepares himself, shall be beaten with many stripes, with the full number without abatement or mitigation. The total sum required by the law shall be inflicted on him. F. Sins of omission, if done in the sight of others, are bad examples, just as sins of commission are. A man may do a great deal of harm by not doing good. We are commanded to let our good works shine before others in Matthew 5:16, and to be examples of faith and charity to others, to be presidents of good works. Titus 3:8, for that is what the word signifies in that text. The world is led by the eye as much, if not more than by the ear. Men are as much prevailed with by examples, as they are by precepts. They are, on the other hand, most inclined to think that they may do what others, especially their betters, do. If rich men give but little, others who are not so rich, and yet able to give, think they may be excused if they give nothing to the poor. If parents neglect prayer, the children scarcely think it their duty to pray. It is indeed an excellent thing to be an exemplary Christian. It shows that religion is practicable, for it draws men on. It is a listless hack which will not follow and strive to keep pace when another mettled horse leads the way. Similarly, it is sad to be an exemplary sinner, for such an one has more sins to answer for than his own, even those of other men which were committed through his example. It is a common plea, such and such learned and educated men do so, and why may not I? Oh, do not follow a multitude, however wise and mighty it is, to do evil. Let us therefore provoke one another to love and good works by our example. Let us not only show, but lead the way. G. Consider that sins of omission are sins which God has severely judged men for in this world, and for which he will judge men in the great day. It is observable how severe God has been to men who have omitted what he commanded them to do, though they have claimed to do it for God's sake. We have an instance of this in Saul. 1 Samuel 15. God sent Saul to destroy Amalek, root and branch, king and people, from head to foot, from throne to threshold, and not to leave one person alive, man, woman, infant and suckling. All must die, oxen and sheep, and so on, none must escape. But Saul spared Agag, and the best of the sheep and oxen, and would not utterly destroy them. The result was that the Lord repented of having set up Saul to be king. Of verse 11. Though Saul pretended that it was done for a sacrifice to God. Of verses 15-22, yet it is charged against him as rebellion and witchcraft. Of verse 23, and his not obeying the voice of the Lord is called doing evil in God's sight. Of verse 19. So he who omits a good, commits an evil. The omission of good is the commission of evil, and is judged accordingly. How dearly this sin of omission cost Saul. Another remarkable instance is that of Eli. He is charged with honoring his sons above God. 1 Samuel 2:29. How so? Eli was a good old man, and can it be thought that he preferred his sons above God? What should the meaning of this be? It is cleared up, however, in the next chapter, where God says, I will judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knoweth, because his sons made themselves vile, and he restrained them not. 1 Samuel 3:13. He did not give them so much as a sour look, or, as the Hebrew reads, he did not frown upon them. And yet let me tell you that Eli went so far that, had his children had any honesty, or any respect to the rebukes of a priest and father, one would have thought that he had said enough. For the old man very gravely expostulated with them, Why do ye such things? For I hear of your evil dealings by all this people. Nay, my sons, for it is no good report that I hear, ye make the Lord's people to transgress. If one man sin against another, the judge shall judge him, but if a man sin against the Lord, who shall entreat for him? 1 Samuel 2:23-25. Thus he lays their sin and danger before them pretty roundly, and yet God says, that he restrained them not. There was an omission, and neglect of more severe discipline. And this omission cost him dear almost as the sins of commission cost his sons, which were not to be purged with sacrifice. 1 Samuel 3:14. Another instance is that concerning the Ammonites and Moabites, who were a bastard brood, and like bastards were not to enter into the congregation of the Lord till the 10th generation, Deuteronomy 23:2-4. The reason given is the sin of omission, because they did not meet Israel with bread and water, when they came out of Egypt. It is a dreadful thing to be excommunicated from, and a dreadful thing not to be admitted into, the congregation of the Lord, and you see that a sin of omission may keep men out for a long time. But God will also judge men for sins of omission in the great and terrible day of his righteous judgment. Not only the wicked, but the slothful servant will be judged, and the slothful will be judged wicked. We have it from the mouth of truth itself, thou wicked and slothful servant, in Matthew 21:26, wicked because slothful. He was no waster, but a brother to one, as we previously noted, because he was slothful. For omitting to improve his talent, he was called and judged a wicked and slothful servant, and his punishment was, beside the loss of his talent, to be cast into outer darkness, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. He had not turned the grace of God into wantonness, yet for being unprofitable he is sent to hell. And again, he shall say also to them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire. Matthew 25:41. It is, says Christ, for your sins of omission, because when I was hungry and thirsty, you, like the Ammonites and Moabites we have just mentioned, you brought me no bread or water, you gave me no meat and drink. Some are ready to justify themselves thus, we never did any man harm, we have wronged and oppressed no man. Yes, but God will condemn them who have not done such evils, because they have not done good. Think of these things, then, and beware of sins of omission. 2. Take heed of sins of commission. We should be careful not to omit our duties, for besides all that has been said, I might add this, that to omit the weightier things of the law, though we observe the lesser, is a sign of hypocrisy in Matthew 23:23. But we should be no less careful to keep ourselves from the evil that is forbidden, from all kinds and sorts of sins, the enumeration of which would be endless. A. Watch against that which may be most properly called your own sin, that to which you are most inclined, and which most easily besets and conquers you. It was David's crown of rejoicing, that he had kept himself from his iniquity. I was also upright before him, and I kept myself from mine iniquity. Psalm 18:23. He kept himself not only from that which was charged upon him by others to be his iniquity in relation to Saul, but as most interpreters take it, that which was the sin of his inclination, as one might say, from the sin of my particular complexion and constitution, my nature's darling sin. Are you young? Then avoid the sins common to this age, flee youthful lusts. 2 Timothy 2:22, or the lusts of youth. There are some lusts almost peculiar to youth. 1. Ambition, vainglory and pride. 1 Peter 5:5, which is most evident in their odd, fantastic dress and eccentric manners, as that text implies, and especially in not submitting to the elders. 2. The gratifying of the sensual appetite and carnal inclination. They are much for the lust of the eye and of the flesh too, as well as for the pride of life. Ecclesiastes tells us that they are much set upon pleasure, the young man's favourite. 11:9 and 12:1. The prodigal, who was the younger brother, in this way wasted his estate, his time and himself. He spent all on back and belly, on riotous living. It was a young man whom Solomon saw going away to her house. Proverbs 7:7, which leads to hell. 3. Another lust of youth is self-conceit, too much proneness to be wise in their own eyes. They think old men fools, but old men know that they are fools. Their conceit puffs them up, and makes them incapable of instruction, and very unteachable. Rehoboam, and his young counselors will save us the labor of giving other examples. 1 Kings 12. It is for this reason that the apostle would have Titus exhort young men to be discreet or sober-minded. Flee then all these and any other youthful lusts. Make the most haste you can from them, do not only creep, or go or run or ride, but flee. Are you old? Hear then, you old men. Joel 1:2. What shall we hear? You will say, take heed of the sins and lusts of old age. Titus 2:2. When men are dying and have one foot in the grave, when they are about to give up the ghost, yet, like the thief on the cross, they will be sinning. Take heed of Solomon's old age sin, a kind of dotage which suffered him to apostatize. 1 Kings 11:3. Be sound in the faith. Titus 2:2. Take heed of the peevishness of old age, be patient, says the text. Take heed of the covetousness of old age, be charitable, says the text. Be fruitful in your old age, that your latter end may be better than your beginning, and the better because, it may be, your beginning was bad. Seek that your last days may be your best days, and so you may die in a good old age, which may be best done when you die good in old age, and are such as St. Paul the aged who had finished his course. It is a crown and glory to be an old good disciple, as Mnason was. Acts 21:16. b. Take heed of the sins which men and women are guilty of, as relatives, and as they stand in relation to one another. Are you a husband or a wife? Beware of being false, or only reigning love. Are you a parent or a child? Are you a master or a servant? Beware of the sins which attend any of the relationships in which you stand. I had, indeed, intended to have detailed the sins, but they are so commonly written of and known that I shall forbear, and only suggest the direction and counsel, which I have often thought may be of great and good use, namely, that every relative person, such as husband or wife, etc., should read and, if they can, write out and pray that God would write in their hearts the several directions which the Scripture so frequently and abundantly gives to all relations, that they may keep them before their eyes, that they may walk in the truth. Relative duties are too little-minded, and if we only considered that we are really that which we are relatively, it would immensely oblige and quicken us to be good in our relationships. It is not likely that they are good Christians who are bad husbands or wives, bad parents or children, bad superiors or inferiors in their places. c. Take heed of the sins of the age, country, and places where you live. There are sins as it were particular to some ages and countries, as to them of the latter and last days, 1 Timothy 4:1-4 and 2 Timothy 3:1-5. When sin becomes an epidemic, it is the less abstained from, for few people care to be different. When sins are as it were the custom and fashion of the country, most will be sinners, especially if sin is countenanced by the example of great ones. But as we should not be conformed to this world at large, neither should we to any part of it. Is there any sin by which the land is defiled, for which the land mourns, and is ready to spew out the inhabitants thereof for it? Leviticus 18:27 and 28. Take heed, then, that you are not found guilty. But be one of the mourners, whom God will set a mark upon. Ezekiel 9:4. When formality, hypocrisy and apostasy are in fashion, be cautious not to sin in any of these ways, any more than by swearing, drunkenness, and uncleanness, though they are common and uncontrolled. Beware lest you regard the favor and praise of men more than, or without, the favor and praise of God, which hypocrites, and only hypocrites do. John 12:42 and 43. Daniel and the 3 children would not sin for the sake of fashion, not even though they were commanded to sin. And the apostles made their appeal to them that would have had them sin, saying, whether it be right in the sight of God to hearken unto you more than unto God. Judge ye. Acts 4:18-20. It is God who judges, and not man, and he only has absolute authority over us, to command what he pleases, and therefore our chief care should be to please him. We shall find that the best way to please all, or to displease any with least danger, is to please him who is all in all. Therefore, if any think it strange that ye run not with them to the same excess of riot, and speak evil of you, 1 Peter 4:4, answer them as Joseph did his mistress, how can I do this great wickedness, and sin against God? Genesis 39:9. Tell them as the apostle does that you and they must give an account to him who is ready to judge the quick and the dead, seeing therefore that the end of all things is at hand, let us be sober, and watch unto prayer. 1 Peter 4:5 and 7. This David did, when they spoke evil of him, fought against him without a cause, and for his love became his adversaries. Psalm 1092-4. d. Take heed of the sins that attend your callings, occupations and trades. I would premise certain things here. 1. Every man should have a calling to follow, and should follow his calling, as was mentioned above. God has given no man a dispensation to be idle. The rule is, and that by commandment, that if any will not work, that is able to work, neither should he eat. 2 Thessalonians 3:10. If this rule were observed, I am afraid that more rich than poor would go with hungry stomach and empty bellies. Of idleness comes no good, but certainly a great deal of evil. They who are at work are not at leisure to sin, but they who are idle are at leisure to do nothing but to sin. Adam in innocence, that better than golden age, had his calling and employment. He was a gardener, a cultivator of the ground, or a husbandman. Genesis 2:15. The angels of heaven are not without their calling. When they are abroad here on earth, they are ministering spirits. Hebrews 1:14. And when at home in heaven, they cease not day or night from praising God. As one of the Greek fathers expresses it, their service and calling is to sing songs and psalms of praise. I may therefore say, take heed of the sin of being without a calling, or of having no calling, especially you who are young and strong to labor. 2. No man's calling necessitates him to sin. There is many a trade of which I would not scruple to say that it is no calling. Many make a livelihood out of trades which are no calling. Harlotry and thieving are no callings, for we are called not to uncleanness, but to holiness. As to lawful callings, to sin is but accidental, and springs more from our inclination than from the callings themselves. Necessities are things that few men are competent judges of, many things are called so which are far from being so, and nothing should be called so that is a sin. He who cannot follow a calling without sinning had better lay aside his trade than live by sinning. That there is sin in callings is not from our vocation, but from our corruption. It is not our calling, but our evil heart that makes us sin. There is no need to tell a lie or to steal or to cheat. There are many other better ways to live, and if we were not distrustful of God, and indulgent to the baseness of our own hearts, we might find them out.